Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. Chapter 37, continued. And to bear with my infirmities, Jane, to overlook my deficiencies, which are none, sir, to me. I love you better now than I can really be useful to you, than I did in your state of proud independence, when you disdained every part but that of the giver and protector. Hitherto I've hated to be helped, to be led. Henceforth I feel I shall hate it no more. I did not like to put my hand into a hireling's, but it is pleasant to feel it circled by Jane's little fingers. I prefer utter loneliness to the constant attendance of servants, but Jane's soft ministry will be a perpetual joy. Jane suits me. Do I suit her? To the finest fibre of my nature, sir. The case being so, we have nothing in the world to wait for. We must be married instantly. He looked and spoke with eagerness. His old impetuosity was rising. We must become one flesh without any delay, Jane. There is but a licence to get, then we marry. Mr. Rochester, I've just discovered the sun is far declined from its meridian, and Pilot has actually gone home to his dinner. Let me look at your watch. Fasten it into your girdle, Janet, and keep it henceforth. I have no use for it. It's nearly 4 o'clock in the afternoon, sir. Don't you feel hungry? The 3rd day from this must be our wedding day, Jane. Never mind fine clothes and jewels now. All that is not worth a fillip. The sun has dried up all the raindrops, sir. The breeze is still. It's quite hot. Do you know, Jane, I have your little pearl necklace at this moment fastened around my bronze scrag under my cravat. I've worn it since the day I lost my only treasure as a memento of her. We will go home through the wood. That will be the shadiest way. He pursued his thoughts without heeding me. Jane, you think me, I dare say, an irreligious dog, but my heart swells with gratitude to the beneficent God of this earth just now. He sees not as man sees, but far clearer, judges not as man judges, but far more wisely. I did wrong. I would have sullied my innocent flower, breathed guilt on its purity. The Omnipotent snatched it from me. I, in my stiff-necked rebellion, almost cursed the dispensation. Instead of bending to the decree, I defied it. Divine justice pursued its course. Disasters came thick on me. I was forced to pass through the valley of the shadow of death. His chastisements are mighty, and one smote me which has humbled me forever. You know I was proud of my strength, but what is it now when I must give it over to foreign guidance, as a child does its weakness? Of late, Jane, only of late, I began to see and acknowledge the hand of God in my doom. I began to experience remorse, repentance, the wish for reconcilement to my Maker. I began sometimes to pray, very brief prayers they were, but very sincere. Some days since, nay, I can number them, for it was last Monday night, a singular mood came over me, one in which grief replaced frenzy, sorrow, sullenness. I'd long had the impression that since I could nowhere find you, you must be dead. Late that night, perhaps it might have been between 11 and 12 o'clock, ere I retired to my dreary rest, I supplicated God that if it seemed good to him, I might soon be taken from this life and admitted to that world to come, where there is still hope of rejoining Jane. I was in my own room and sitting by the window, which was open. It soothed me to feel the balmy night air, though I could see no stars, and only by a vague luminous haze knew the presence of a moon. I longed for thee, Janet. Oh, how I longed for thee, both with soul and flesh. I asked of God, once again in anguish and humility, if I had not been long enough desolate, afflicted, tormented, and might not soon taste bliss and peace once more. That I merited all I endured, I acknowledged. That I could scarcely endure more, I pleaded. And the Alpha and Omega of my heart's wishes broke involuntarily from my lips in the words, Jane, Jane, Jane. Did you speak these words aloud? I did, Jane. If any listener had heard me, he would have thought me mad. I pronounced them with such frantic energy. And it was last Monday night, somewhere near midnight. Yes, but the time is of no consequence. What followed is the strange point. You will think me superstitious. Some superstition I have in my blood and always had. Nevertheless, this is true. True, at least, it is that I heard what I now relate. As I exclaimed, "Jane, Jane, Jane," a voice, I cannot tell whence the voice came, but I know whose it was, replied, "I am coming. Wait for me." And a moment after went whispering on the wind the words, "Where are you?" I'll tell you if I can, the idea, the picture these words opened to my mind, yet it's difficult to express what I want to express. Ferndean is buried, as you see, in a heavy wood where sounds fall dull and dies over unreverberating. "Where are you?" seemed spoken amongst mountains, for I heard a hill-sent echo repeat the words. Cooler and fresher at the moment, the gale seemed to visit my brow. I could have deemed that in some wild, lone scene, I and Jane were meeting, in spirit. I believe we must have met. You no doubt were at that hour in unconscious sleep, Jane. Perhaps your soul wandered from its cell to comfort mine, for those were your accents, as certain as I live, they were yours. Reader, it was on Monday night, near midnight, that I too had received the mysterious summons. Those were the very words by which I replied to it. I listened to Mr. Rochester's narrative, but made no disclosure in return. The coincidence struck me as too awful and inexplicable to be communicated or discussed. If I told anything, my tale would be such as must necessarily make a profound impression on the mind of my hearer. And that mind, yet from its sufferings too prone to gloom, needed not the deeper shade of the supernatural. I kept these things then, and pondered them in my heart. You cannot now wonder, continued my master, that when you rose upon me so unexpectedly last night, I had difficulty in believing you any other than a mere voice and vision, something that would melt to silence and annihilation, as the midnight whisper and mountain echo had melted before. Now I thank God. I knew it to be otherwise. Yes, I thank God. He put me off his knee, rose, and reverently lifting his hat from his brow and bending his sightless eyes to the earth, he stood in mute devotion. Only the last words of the worship were audible. I thank my Maker that in the midst of judgment he has remembered mercy. I humbly entreat my Redeemer to give me strength to lead henceforth a purer life than I have done hitherto. Then he stretched his hand out to be led. I took that dear hand, held it a moment to my lips, then let it pass round my shoulder. Being so much lower of stature than he, I served both for the prop and guide. We entered the wood and wended homeward.